Oh, I don't mind a little rain on my suit. A little bit of angry makes you cute. And we've been watching this show so long, but it feels like everything that we wrote went back into the pen we used. It won't take long, even when I'm without you, when I'm without you, babe. So listen up and play along. And that's how time flies, like we on a different timeline. Tell me that you're here and feeling down for anything. Oh, I'm down for anything. It's fine line that we keep on walking all night. Tell me that you're here and feeling down for anything. Oh, I'm down for anything. Down, 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 if we can keep it. Down, 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 if we can keep it. Down, down, down. Oh, I'm down for anything. Down, 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 if we can keep it. Down, 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 if we can keep it. Down, down, down. Oh, I'm down for anything. Yeah, we can make a mess inside this booth. You're taking me to places old and new. Sweeter sound than our favorite song. And it feels like every time that it comes on, we just roll on till the day's done and the lights gone. And it won't take long, even when I'm without you, when I'm without you, babe. So listen up and play along, yeah. And that's how time flies, like we on a different timeline. Tell me that you're here and feeling down for anything. Oh, I'm down for anything. It's fine line that we keep on walking all night. Tell me that you're here and feeling down for anything. Oh, I'm down for anything. anda corre la que hay, ay, 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 ay. ¿Quién no anda corre la que hay, ay, 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 ay. Fundiendo corre la que hay, ay, 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 ay. Yeah. ¿Quién no anda corre la que hay, ay, 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 ay. Wow, se despega like a rocket. Oh yeah, she been my rocket. Yeah. Una vez, honey, honey. Yeah. Baby, no lo pares. Yeah. Si es la que hay, pues la que hay. Yeah. Y Peter's on her, that's my kind. Wow, lo quieres pa' mirar el time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Por si algún día ya no hay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, ey, no bebes más o hay. Copa bitter con limón, no quieres tanquear. Yeah, gestiones y mala desaprovecháis. Y aunque eso diera la ocasión, así la aprovecháis. Le llega heavy, hoy no va a portarme bien. Toca pelle y me vacila 10 de 100. Ahora es tú si retrega constantemente. She's smoking glass, casi que rats. Mi nombre por tu ciudad. Baby, sigue que lo escuché el vecino de atrás. Let's hop and cash. Y si preguntan la que hay, she want it, I got it, acabo de fixar. Let's put it gas, la partidita al solitario. You're all around, yeah, yeah. Eso que tiene duplicado, yeah, yeah. Démelo para el otro lado, yeah. Oh yeah, oh yeah, baja que se amontone. Tranquilo, sáltame los botones. Los mamas y a mí me se moscones en todas las posiciones. Oh no, otro cero. Ruge bien si lo meto un aguacero. BBM, very big monetero. Quieren dinero, fundiendo cobre la que hay, ay, 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 ay. Quien no anda corre la que hay, ay, 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 ay. Ey, fundiendo cobre la que hay, ay, 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 ay. Quien no anda corre la que hay, ay, 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 ay. Pretty.
invincible.
Darling, I've been tempted by the darkness, telling me that I should throw it all away. Fight so hard, my heart is hardly helpless. Find myself so desperate on my knees to break. And I hear the voice of an angel telling me not to lay it down. And I feel the spirit guiding, telling me not to give up. Hold on to every promise I've been praying for at night. I hold on to every
Yes.
It is. There we go, right on this. One of the Fuda punchers has got a 6-second advantage. So it looks like the rider from Fuda punches, unless he completely capitulates here.
Live dus bij de voorlaatste wedstrijd van de Zwift Grand Prix. Zoals u in de uitsnijding kan zien, zijn de renners reeds onderweg. Ronde 6 is de langste wedstrijd die op het programma staat. Het wordt ook een lange avond, want ook de vrouwen komen hierna nog aan de slag. Het gaat een kleine overlap worden. Dus de vrouwen gaan al vertrekken als de mannen nog bezig zijn. We komen hier net bovenop Box Hill. De eerste punten zijn daar. Ik ga eventjes laten zien hoe het in orde zit en hoe de situatie voor het moment is. Dit was de uitslag van ronde 5, die we nogmaals gewonnen hebben. Dus tot op heden hebben we 4 van de 5 wedstrijden kunnen winnen. In de algemene stand wil dat dan ook zeggen dat we op de eerste plek staan, wat er vandaag ook zou gaan gebeuren. Normaal gaat dat niet veranderen, dus we gaan de laatste wedstrijd normaal ook aanvatten als leiders in het klassement. Vanwege de dubbele punten is het wel belangrijk dat we zoveel mogelijk voorsprong proberen te behalen. Voor het moment is dat 18 punten. We gaan proberen, als het mogelijk is, dat boven de 20 te krijgen, want met de dubbele punten kan het anders nog heel tricky worden. Het parcours van de dag. Zoals u ziet, het langste parcours van de hele rondes, 70 kilometer bijna, 4 maal Box Hill. Het is een puntenwedstrijd. Punten bovenop Box Hill voor de 5 eerste, 150, 75, 50 en zo naar beneden. En dan punten aan de finish. Dus het is voornamelijk belangrijk om aan de finish te komen met zoveel mogelijk van onze renners, liefst alle 5. Nog altijd bij het laatste gedeelte dat er overblijft, omdat daar de meeste punten liggen. Maar als het even kan, ook onderweg iets te sprokkelen op Box Hill, 1 of 2 maal. En liefst dan eenmaal de eerste plek, want met eenmaal eerste plek heb je dus 150 punten. Moet je al 2 maal tweede voor zijn, dan heb je ook maar 150 punten. We gaan dat dus zien. We gaan heel tactisch moeten zijn en heel slim. Vooral energie sparen, kijken naar Next, die op de tweede plaats staan, in mindere mate naar Coalition. En daar kan ik al van meegeven dat bij Coalition al 1 renner is gelost. Dus dat is enkel positief voor ons, kwestie van de punten. En alle andere ploegen eigenlijk die technisch niet meer meedoen voor het eindklassement, die kunnen enkel voor ons punten wegnemen van onze tegenstanders Next. Ik ga langzaam maar zeker overschakelen. We zitten in de afdaling nog van Box Hill, zie ik. Zoals gezegd, het wordt wel een langere wedstrijd. Ik denk dat ze nu nog iets meer dan een uur te goed gaan. Enkel Box Hill, dus daartussen gaat niet zo heel veel te zien zijn. Ik wens u toch een aangenaam kijkplezier en ik kom zeker nog bij jullie terug. Even overschakelen naar Box Hill.
Just keep on going. So it's a really good opportunity to take a micro rest, and he's still just off the front. He's going to be caught, I think, as we go in through to the tunnels. But a lot of riders still in this pack.
Yeah.
But I do think, Jez, you're talking about the riders who get detached. If they really do climb Box Hill quickly and riders get dropped, it's going to be very hard. I do think we might see 15 or 20 riders possibly not scoring today because we are really in uncharted territory. And I think, Jez, if it's cool, let's bring in Nathan, because Nathan, far more experienced at racing on Zwift than us, knows this game like the back of his hand. But what I want to ask him is how the team's going to approach a race that's so different than anything we've seen before. We've seen the types of racing mixed up in Zwift Grand Prix, points races, scratch races, team time trials, Nathan. But how a team's going to approach this, 70 Ks on Zwift, is something we've never really seen before. It's not very usual at all, mate, is it?
Yeah, it is a lot different when it comes to... The only time you really see this is kind of KISS 100, the 100 kilometers every Sunday. So a lot of these racers actually show up to that race to get a little bit of endurance and a punch over around a 2 hour to 3 hour total. And so it's a really long-standing race. So that's the one place that we see this a lot of times for these top-end athletes. It's almost like the who's who weekly showdown. So, but I think as far as tactically goes, because there are points up and at the top of Box Hill, you'll see again and again what we just saw. Essentially, somewhere between 9 to 13 watt per kilogram kick at the end of about a 5-minute VO2 effort for each and every time. But you're going to get these little testers to see if we can throw riders off the front and how lax the pack gets. Some of those, though, I think are also going to be ways to tempt the pack, to tempt other teams to get satisfied with the makeup of a breakaway and say, okay, well, we've got somebody who's up there who can challenge that 150 points, send them up the road. We're going to trust that and we'll mop up the rest. And I think because of that mop up the rest, at that point, if that happens, things will really calm down in the pack and there'll be a couple of just kind of angry bees that wanted to be involved in a break trying to get back across. So I think that's kind of how things are going to play out for most of the day.
We're seeing, guys, a fascinating sort of tickling of the front end here. Bjorn Andresen seems determined to get a little breakaway going from that big group as well. He's got one of the Swedish Zwifters with there. They've got 2 riders there. No, they haven't, so they've got 1 up there. So individual teams putting 1 or 2 in there. Quite a lot of riders using the transition onto the bridge, Southwark Bridge, going across the River Thames to come back towards the finish again to use their power-up. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, if you haven't used your power-up by now, when you get the next one, you don't then have 2 power-ups, do you? Don't have 2. You effectively lose the first one, you pick up the next one, don't you?
It's if you don't use it, if you don't use it, you lose it, basically. You can only ever have 1 power-up onto it. But on this particular round, it's just the same one anyway. But, you know, when you look at how long they're going to be spending, you might as well use them. You know, if you use each and every power up at the right time to optimize it, that's a fair bit of energy saved. So use it when you can, and it's best used. The faster the pack is moving, the more beneficial, the more benefit you're going to get out of that 40 seconds. So it's a really nice opportunity just to take the pressure off the pedals, as we see Rick Ottomer. This guy's won some big races over the years on the Zwift, a big powerhouse. He's just led through, but it looks as if the peloton here are not letting a rider of this class go. But I think that was, as you said before, more of a tickling, just a kind of little bit of a precursor, just to see what this is like. As we know, in the Zwift Grand Prix, although we've got these longer races on KISS, I'm still intrigued at how these big elite teams actually play this one. And I think to a degree, it's going to be a little bit of a suck it and see voyage of discovery. So I'm intrigued to see. I'd like to be a fly on the wall in some of the DSs who are on Discord talking to their riders. Some riders in the team are going to be aggressive. Others are going to be a bit more cautious, saving themselves to the end, as we see Dawson now taking a punt off the front. Yeah,
the Irishman for Wahoo Lacol. He sort of waited until we saw that last little move by Ottomer come back in and sort of bridged across to Ottomer and then went again himself. Getting lots of ride-ons, which is nice to see. Thank you to everyone out there that's supporting us, watching us, particularly if you've been with us all the way through the Zwift Grand Prix. The next 2 weeks is when we see it all decided. Chris Dawson in the baggy hat, looking good under the bridge as well. They're riding IRL on our map, effectively. They're riding westward back towards Buckingham Palace on the north of the river. We're seeing Chris Dawson in his pain cave there, working hard. Riding westward, and it won't be too long before they're right up against the Thames again and then ready to cross back over the bridge. As always with Zwift, we've used the artistic license to kind of change some of the bridges around. The bridge they just rode across would have been Southwark Bridge, but it appears to be a version of London Bridge, which I absolutely love because you're kind of bringing together all the best parts of London. As we always do, we saw the same thing in Glasgow and bring together all the best parts of a city in the Zwift setting, in the Zwift world in particular. Right, 2 of the Coalition Alpha riders, Voyasan and Jacobs, trying to muster things up at the front end, but it's still sticking together though, Matt, isn't it?
Yeah, it's still pretty sticky here. There's a few riders, as you say. He's got 6 seconds now, has the Irishman. Not the most aerodynamic piece of headwear that he could have opted for, perhaps, but it's certainly a nice talking point for us. But I tell you what, the sort of numbers that he's having to put out to stay off the front at the moment, even in these early stages. But again, it's worth a go, isn't it? If you can build out a lead of maybe 10 or 15 seconds and you can sustain it, that might be your goal for the race. And I'm sure there's some teams, like we see with the Fudor Punchers earlier on, clearly one of their riders has been tasked with the effort of just, okay, your finish line is first time up Box Hill. You've scored us 150 points. That's a massive amount of points, 75 points per second. So I think it's worth taking a risk and saving other riders to mop up a little bit later on go on the offensive. So I don't necessarily think that Dawson has gone away on feel, on instinct. I think this might have been a preconceived plan to wait for that little bit of a lull just re-entering London again and going, because he's got double digits now, 11.2 seconds. This is looking good, but he's having to maintain this sort of speed. He's having to ride it between 4.5 and 5.5 watts a kilo. He won't be able to do that all day, but what he might be able to do that is for the next 6 or 7 Ks, taking him to the top of Box Hill.
Matt, I just want to bring Nathan in here. Nathan, can I ask you a question from a team manager's perspective? We're into the last 2 rounds of this, right? So the leading teams, the likes of Wahoo, Lacole, Coalition Alpha, Next, Esports and Able Synergy, they're kind of, I suspect at some point, watching each other. Is there an opportunity? We saw, who did we see earlier? Jardonnet from Foudre Poncheuse. Is there an opportunity for an individual rider from one of the lesser ranked teams to hang out there? And do you think the big teams are going to be going, no, actually, just let him hang? We've got to watch. At what point do they start watching their big rivals?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. At this point, you're only going to be, it's kind of like a GC contention when it comes to time, just based on points, right? Like, who's up the road? Is it someone that we need to be worried about? No, it's not. They're not even close to us in points. We only need to be worried about beating these individuals. I think there's also, Wahoo Lacole, though, are on that list, being close to the top. So I think with Wahoo Lacole, what's happening here is a little bit different than that, where we're so early in the race, and knowing that Dawson, if you take a look at his watts per kilogram versus what his raw watts are, this guy is a monster when it comes to just producing raw watts and speed. So they're sending him on the flatter sections of course to hope that he can fade climb and grab some points up at the top. The other teams are thinking that Dawson's not going to stay away the entire time, and maybe think they're going to be able to climb a lot faster than he can and catch him, and not be quite as worried about the initial effects of this, where they're going to mop up more points later on. I think they are keeping him on a leash, though, to not let it get too out of control, because I think some of these teams are still going to want that 150 over the top. But WLC, if I got in their head and was thinking, they're thinking Dawson, bigger rider, big watts, flatter sections, that's where you send him.
Nathan, if you were racing tonight, what would your DS Alessio be saying in your ear? Is it, and what do you prefer? Is it a calming, don't panic, everyone stay together, or do you want to be riled and shouted at? Mate, to get on with it. What's the best for you? I don't think
you have a choice with Team Italy. With the Italians, you don't have a choice. Yeah. Die! It's just, it's non-stop. It's just a lot. It's a lot of fun. It's like being in a cycling rave party and hanging out with Team Italy, which I really enjoy it, actually. The energy is infectious with them, and so whether or not I would have thought I'd like it getting into the middle of it, I enjoyed it once I was in the middle of it all.
Thank you, Nathan. Hey, Tom Berry's got a very good fan. Look at that fan.
Ondertussen gaan we voor de tweede maal richting Box Hill. Momenteel is alles onder controle. Enkele geloste, één renner voorop. Dawson van Wahoo Lacole. Dat is helemaal geen erg. Technisch mag die van onszelf de volle pot nog pakken op Box Hill. Maar momenteel heeft hij een 20-tal seconden voorsprong. Ik weet niet of dat volstaat om nog boven te komen. Dat gaan we zo meteen zien. We gaan hier over de brug en dan duiken we de tunnel in, de metro. En dan gaan we de tweede maal Box Hill beginnen. En 4 maal gaan we Box Hill beklimmen vandaag. Hier gaat hij rechts. 26 seconden heeft hij momenteel.
Watts per kilo, 7 watts per kilo now. As Nathan mentioned, he's a powerful rider, and he is trying to stay clear before they enter back into the Surrey Hills, just south of the River Thames, and ready to get towards Box Hill itself. Don't forget, folks at home, 17 kilometres per lap, this one. Let's have a look at Coalition Alpha. Nearly all of them, they were all in team kit until we saw Han Yun Zhang taking off his jersey. Nice to have everyone in picture there as well. 3rd overall at the moment. And according to this, so they've got 90 race points. They packed it in well that first time up there, haven't it? We haven't looked at too much about how the points were scored, but they must have had a lot of their riders right up at the front of that, Matt. Bearing in mind, 75 points for 2nd, 50 points for 3rd. a little look back and see who it was that was their best point scorer, actually. You're good with these stats, Matt. You might be able to do that for me, maybe, but certainly packing well. And
no, they certainly
have
are.
Zanger's.
If you could score, I mean, if you could score points early on, you sacrifice riders. And what it does as well, it's like in anything. It's not that any of these runs will need motivating. They're all geared up for this. They know what they need to do. But for the morale and for the spirit of the team to get up the road early and have essentially a win within a win is massively important, and the team can kind of feed off that. So yeah, the Foudre Puncheurs had a great start today. Three more opportunities, should I say, to take points at the top. But look at this lead. It's not very often in Zwift racing at all that you see a solo rider with a lead of around 30 seconds. This is impressive. And this rider, can look at the kind of power he's having to put out here, and that power is easier to put out once you start to hit the slopes. It's just a matter of can he maintain it. He can almost afford to lose 15 or 20 seconds towards the top and back off, but a half a minute lead at the bottom of Box Hill, that's massively impressive from the man from Wahoo Lacole.
Particularly when you consider the the level of the riders we saw trying to do that before him. We saw Bjarne Andersen have a go, it didn't work. But I'm surprised, Matt. I mean, Wahoo Lacole are in 4th place. They're only, how many points down are they on the top 3? They're only 2 points off Coalition Alpha anyway. I don't understand. We did see Coalition Alpha mustering, but I'm surprised they weren't on this straight away. It's not like it's one of our lower ranked teams who's got a rider up there. This is very close to the podium, and one rider, as you say, is over 30 seconds now, 33 seconds.
Yeah, it was a very, very good move indeed. And just going back to, and Wahoo Lacole they were 4th in the team points. So Foudre Puncheurs, courtesy of that win, of course, are leading the team points at the moment with 150. Coalition Alpha 2nd, Hexagon, and then Wahoo Lacole. Another illustration of how well Hexagon have gone this year. They've been so consistent from the very off. As we look at the peloton, we're looking at the Movistar team here: Kershaw, Vel, Lednes, Power, and Miguel Angel Andres. But there's a few riders already starting to struggle. You can see the shape of the peloton there, some gaps going. And to tell you what, that isn't the full field there already. We're still pretty early in this race. A few riders struggling to hold the pace on the lower slopes of Box Hill.
Well, they're on the lower slopes of Box Hill. You can see it ramping, and our leader, Dawson, is already into the first of the switchbacks as well. So familiar to anyone who's ridden up there in real life, but it is if you've only ever ridden up it in Zwift, if you haven't already, then go and ride it. But it's you can really get a real sense for it. It's incredibly realistic, actually, Matt, isn't it?
Oh, it's the gradient is basically meter for meter. It really is, and I've ridden, and I've no doubt you have, Jez, on multiple occasions in real life up there, and it's uncanny. It really is. It really is uncanny. And Box Hill, although it's an iconic climb, let's be honest, it's not an Alpe d'Huez Zwift. It's not a particularly steep climb, but it's a climb that you can really get into rhythm. The gradient doesn't really vary that much, and the nearer they get to the top, it actually flattens. So one of the steeper parts is 6%, 7% maximum on this one. But it's a climb, it's a fast climb, and you can actually benefit from sitting in the wheel because they'll be moving up this climb pretty quickly. But yeah, it's remarkably realistic, it really is. And quite nostalgic as well, because I've been riding up this climb for quite a few years, but to see it rendered almost perfectly in Zwift is pretty special.
Oh yeah, it was of course the run-in for the Olympic road race. I think the time trial went up it as well in 2012. Is that right, man? I know the Olympic road race finished back up in front of massive crowds in London 2012.
The time trial didn't. No, the time trial was more out near East Molesey, that sort of neck of the woods. But all the road races went up it multiple times. Yeah.
Well, this guy is riding his own time trial. 384 watts currently. That's 5.1 watts per kilogram right now, and necking up above 6 watts per kilogram. But it is snaking a little bit of a fight back here as well, by the looks of it. This is Turek as well, riding for Next Esports. I do apologise.
Yeah, Daniel Turek,
yes.
Great rider, the Czech rider. It's a classy rider on the road as well. So when you look at the riders, we've got the Zwift specialist, the esports specialist. Of course, all these riders will ride out on the road as well. But Turek as well is a rider that's performed exceptionally well internationally out on the road, but has really, taken to Zwift racing for the last few years like a duck to water. So classy rider. And let's be honest, some of the road riders will really like their chance in this one because of the added angle of endurance. And Turek is about to be joined by Kaminski here. But still, look at the lead. A minute ago, it was 32 seconds for Dawson. But that real injection of pace by Turek has slashed in very short order, 10 seconds off the lead of the Irishman.
And it's interesting because these are the teams in second and third who are now on the attack as well. They're chasing down Wahoo Lacole rider, Chris Dawson, his team is in fourth. These two teams who are on the attack now are third and second. Big question, Matt. What are Abus Synergy thinking, our leading team? We haven't really seen much yet of the blue top boys in the blue, black and red. Where are they?
Well, they're currently fourth and fifth, so they're lurking. Paradigms is there as well, and it's an all-Belgian team.
Here we go.
Van Elst is also there, so they are starting to muster, actually. But they've been keeping their powder dry. I know it's a commentator's cliche, but they certainly have. But all the big hitters, as we head towards the top of the climb, this is where it flattens out, and this is where, if you deploy your draft power-up just at the right time, you're going to get the most benefit just as we go towards the top, and then you can really pick up the pace and try and accelerate out through the arch.
No coaching, Matthew Stevens. Just as you say it, they all do it as well. Look at that, right on time as well. Here we go. It does look like Dawson's going to hang on, but boy, is it going to be close come the top. It's probably only about 10 seconds by the time he goes through, so he has made it count. The Irishman, Chris Dawson, takes the maximum 150. Don't forget, there's only points for the top 5. One of this lot's going to miss out. It looks to me like those 4 have all scored points.
Zoals u net zag, hebben we Dawson de volle buit laten nemen en is Jasper Parridaans mooi tweede geworden. Heeft hem wel wat energie gekost, maar onze opzet is dat we elke ronde iemand anders gebruiken voor punten. En we zijn dus toch maar mooi nu met 75 punten onderweg. Wat ik ook nog zag is dat Seggebroek, en dat is een tweede renner van Coalition, ook de rol moest lossen. Dus Coalition nog maar 3 renners en nog geen punten. Of toch weinig. Eens even kijken, 125 punten. We staan daar prima. Miskijk u niet op de rangschikking, want u ziet ons met 75 en Coalition met 125. Maar als u weet hoeveel punten er strak aan de finish nog liggen, dan is dat heel prima. Ik zie ook Next nog altijd niet op het bord staan. Dus momenteel, so far so good. We gaan nu in de afdaling en dan hoort u mij zo meteen terug voor de derde maal Box Hill.
Your question, Abus Synergy now moving up and have got on at the point score, and Toyota Elite E-Cycling in 6th currently with 50. But this little league group does look like a pretty handy one.
Yeah, Kaminski just joining the back of it there. I'm just, we're looking at the current positions of Abus Synergy. So they have got everyone in that leading group, crucially. As we look down to De Kock, who's the 5th of their 5 riders, they're all in there in that main group as well. So that's good for them. Nathan Guerra, I wonder if I could bring you back in. I've got a tactical question for you, Nathan. I'm just thinking, we've just seen Chris Dawson make a massive effort. Now, it might be that he's in such good form tonight that Hal Davies is going to say to him, just keep going, mate, we're going to go again this time round, try and get clear, try and get some more points. But when you've got 5 riders, particularly with the strength in depth, we've just noticed that Abus Synergy have got everyone in this leading group anyway. Is there any merit to basically saying, like, Dawson, you're our man for the first time up it? I mean, there's 4 ascents, right? So you can split the team quite evenly. And then do you say, right, next time up it, Ben Meir, the American riding for Wahoo Lacole, it's going to be his chance to try and get clear. I know it's not that simple, but it just seems mathematically so neat. We've got 4 ascents and 5 riders. Is there anything in that?
Yeah, I think there's probably something to that if they do have breakaway specialist, somebody who wants to try and get away and not just challenge the climb. I really do think when it comes to Dawson, challenging at the end of a climb like that requires around 6 watts per kilogram in order to hang on with a punch at the end, it would be really difficult for him to challenge with a 12 watt per kilogram sprint like we saw from Paradines and the rest there. And so I have a feeling for him specifically, that was really tailored to his rider type. That attack, get his distance, get his time, get the advantage where he is the strongest compared to everyone else. And when the pack honestly just doesn't have a whole lot of interest at that moment to chase down, and where they're going to be infighting a little bit more about who's doing the work. I'm not chasing that. I'm not chasing that. They're all looking at each other going, we're not doing anything until you're not getting any advantage on us. We'll do it once we actually hit the climb, which is what we saw. Now, when it comes to a rider like Ben Meer, very different situation. He doesn't really have a sprint. The guy is just a motor when it comes to hitting any kind of extended VO2 or threshold. But on a flat situation like that, he wouldn't be gaining nearly as much speed as we saw from Dawson. So I think for Meer, they're going to be looking more toward the end of the race when it comes to Ben Meer and some of the other higher profile riders when it comes to pure climbing prowess, and also later on in races.
Interesting. Now, we've seen a bit of a regrouping here as well by the looks of it, and one rider trying to go clear as we go up the escalator, which I absolutely love. There's an iconic London imagery for you, but coming back in together. Movistar, we've just been looking at their team actually. It's Vidar Mail who had a little go off the front there, back in that leading group. It's worth me pointing out, by the way, particularly if you're joining us at the beginning of this year, they're getting close to going back across the start line again, where they'll pick up their draft power-ups, which is why you're seeing quite a lot of the riders using them now anyway, just to save a little bit of energy. It's worth me pointing out, and I didn't do it at the beginning, that all drafting is enabled in here, obviously, as I said, but also bike and wheel performance is neutralized. So despite the fact that you can see the riders in different bikes, we also talked about equipment and helmets and things being more or less aero. All of that is neutralized for the Zwift Grand Prix. So it's a very even, level playing field. And I'm pleased to say as well, the adjudicators within the Zwift Grand Prix team are incredibly hot on the equipment setup and calibration, all that kind of thing as well. So you can be certain what you're watching is a very pure race too. I should have mentioned that at the beginning because I'm conscious that some people will be joining us for the Zwift Grand Prix for the first time. While I mentioned joining us for the first time, by the way, it's worth me pointing out, and Nathan, you'll know all about this. Matt, we were chatting about it just before we came on air. This is the year where we launched the biggest ever Zwift event, the Zwift Games, all the way through March this spring. It's the biggest Zwift event ever. It's not just for the pros either, it's for all you Zwifters at home who are watching. It is spread across 3 different championship races, the Sprint Championships, the Epic Championships, and the Climb Championships, which bring it all to its conclusion on the Alpe d'Huez Zwift every single week for the first 3 weeks in March. Check it all out at Zwift.com. Go and read up about it all as well. The Zwift Games are coming, and you'll see an awful lot of these pros who are racing in the Zwift Grand Prix switching straight to that in March. This has been a wonderful stepping stone towards the Zwift Games, the biggest ever esports cycling event in history. It's going to be just a bit good. I'm excited about it, guys. I'm sure you are too.
Yeah, and I think as well, given that it's not that far away, there'll be a lot of riders who will be using the Zwift Grand Prix as important preparation. There's plenty of races in between then. Of course, we've got the Tour de Zwift going on, a bit of a nudge the other day on the Tour de Zwift, so lots of opportunities to keep the condition. But as you say, the thing I like particularly about the concept of the first ever Zwift Games is the fact that anybody can start off and enter it. It's probably one of the most inclusive events. Well, the whole of the Zwift community is massively inclusive, but this is there's something for everybody in this one. I cannot wait to see what happens and how that unfolds. But in the meantime, we've got some big hitters, Rick Ottoma and Lionel Vujasan, who have cleared off the front. They've only got about 1.5 seconds, but I tell you what, the duo of Ottoma and Vujasan relaying as well, they're just being caught. They're not 2 riders that you want to let give too much rope. Vidar Mel, Zach Nier also there as well from the United States of America. But Mel, it's the second time he's been on the offensive. That little escalator that you were talking about earlier on, Jez, it must be just 20, 25 metres long, if that, but it's horrible. If you hit it and you're not given the right cadence, don't select the right gear, you can almost stop. And it looked like he tried to sort of give it a little bit of a nudge there and open up a bit of a gap, but he's clearly feeling good because he's gone straight over the top again and is currently just moving under the underpass. And it's Kaminski of Poland who has managed to punt across, but they've got a couple of seconds lead. But this is quite active, a little bit more active than I thought it might be. I wondered if it'd be quite neutral, but I think given the distance, given the fact there's nothing really to reflect on, I think the teams have seized the opportunity to try and race a little bit disruptively. And I just want to bring in Nathan here. Nathan, do you think this sort of race, the distance here, because it's relatively unknown, not unheard of as you alluded to before and talked about and detailed, but do you think this sort of race, given the profile, you can afford to take a few risks and just see what happens?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I actually think that in the back end of the race, we're going to see a lot more of this. I think you're going to hit a comfort point within this pack when the big names start going, now is when I'm okay with taking risks, because behind there's not the only firepower behind now at this point is those who can match me and I expect to be racing. So they're going to start thinking, well, now is when we can burn matches, because anybody that I'm going to race is going to have to burn some matches too to come along with me. A lot of the pack is going to start whittling down. Maybe not quite as much at this halfway-ish point, but after this next climb, I think it's going to be a little bit more no-holds-barred, getting some creativity out on course to see what is actually going to sink, specifically because of the level of comfort the riders will have with not being worked against by an entire team, but just those they really are going to be racing in the end.
Yep, that's a really interesting point. It's pretty exciting. And as you say, and there will be some riders as well. I think it's worth to say, Jez, as well, that because of the distance we've got here, some riders might have just struggled early on, and then some riders after 45 minutes come into their own as well. Given this is a long race, there's far more phases with which a rider can pass through and actually start to feel good near the end. So I'm waiting to see if that unfolds. But yeah, lots of attacking on this little flat section, running parallel with the River Thames. Just over to the left is the London Eye somewhere, but yeah, it takes me back. It's almost like we're there, isn't it?
Oh, it's wonderful. This is the embankment, isn't it? The embankment. Yeah. This road itself has been used for so many things. Stages of the Tour of Britain. What else have we seen around here? Pro crits and things going way back over the years. Ride London, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, the embankment's such a famous London racing road in a way. Bjorn Andresen just away, the world champion for a short while there, and back in the fold. I think this time, this might be now, Matt, the little pause in things. If we look at the watts per kilo, it's still pretty high, isn't it? It's still cranking on, but it might be the slight pause before the next ascent. We're basically halfway through the race now. We've got 2 more ascents of Box Hill, and then the run in. I should point out, by the way, the final time they actually get to the base of Box Hill, turn around the little roundabout at the bottom, which is down by the Motorcyclist Cafe down there in real life. Those of you who know Box Hill and Surrey, they turn around that roundabout and go back on themselves, to then go back across the river and finish right in front of Buckingham Palace on the Mall, or the Mall, whichever you might call it. We're a bit split on that one. I'm finding myself, Matt, starting to look down every time.
Zo meteen gaan we aan de derde maal Box Hill beginnen. Ik had nog een 35 à 40 renners in deze groep. De volgende passage over de Box Hill gaat dan ook al heel betekenend zijn. We gaan zien of er nog renners moeten lossen, of we allemaal mee over de top geraken. Indien ja, dan denk ik dat we gemotiveerd genoeg kunnen zijn voor ook de 4e maal met de ploeg erover te geraken. Zoals gezegd, momenteel hebben we het goed onder controle. Onze grootste en enige tegenstander is nog altijd Next, die ook nog altijd met 5 zitten. Het enige voordeel is dat wij al wel punten hebben. Maar die spelen volgens mij op de finishpunten. Nog een 3-tal minuten en dan beginnen we aan de klim.
The willingness of multiple class riders to go off the front. The peloton, if they want to bring them back, have to run at the same speed. And if you've already been dropped and you're suffering, you're going to be losing 3, 4, 5, even more, 6, 8 seconds per kilometre. So I think it's going to be hard. But these riders will not give up, that is for sure. But it's going to be a lonely ride through London and the Surrey Hills if you're off the back at the moment.
Has to be said, Matt, Rick Ottomer, I think, has been the most active rider. I'd give him the most aggressive rider so far in this one. He's been constantly sneaking on and off the front all the time. The hexagonal... Sorry, you used the French pronunciation. You're absolutely right. Hexagon earlier, and he was off the front there, back in the fold now. Trying to work out, you're slightly better at these things than me, looking down the numbers, just how big this leading group is now. It looks about half the field, maybe 35 riders, something like that.
Yeah, 30, 40 riders there. I think we've got as a great shot as they round the corner and head back in a southerly direction. Actually heading towards Waterloo at the moment. But no, there's Andreas, and yeah, I think we've got about 40 riders in that front group, so a lot of riders out the back. But the thing is, if you are out the back, as we see, let's say there's 40, 45 riders here, still a lot of points on the road. So the key is to get into a group and get into a rhythm with a group and ride together. Try and keep numbers together over the top of the climb. The last thing you want to do is try and do a hero ride and ride on your own. So if you are in a group, especially if you've got a teammate with you. It's sticking together now, not losing too much time. But as I say, it's a long, long day in the virtual saddle today. As things settle down just a little bit for a moment, this is what I think definitely Nathan was talking about. In a race this long, even in a shorter race, there are moments where it settles for a minute. And this can do two things. It can provide a false sense of security because riders will go straight over the top, or it offers a real opportunity to recalibrate, communicate, recover before you go again. And I think that's what we're seeing briefly here, because we're going to be approaching Box Hill for the third time very shortly.
Yeah, this is the third lap. They've just gone south of the river, as Matt mentioned, going over the River Thames. They headed towards what would be the National Theatre and, well, what would be eventually Elephant and Castle, the likes of those places in South London. I was born in North London, Matt, and there's always this big rivalry between the North and the South. So I'm always delighted to see on Zwift that we've basically done away with South London altogether. We've grabbed Surrey, dragged it up to cover South London completely. It's all gone. No, listen, I lived in South London for a while. I lived in Greenwich, in Charlton, and I got to know Herne Hill and all those.
Zijn eraan begonnen. Derde maal Box Hill. Rick Ottema van Hexagon. Een lichte voorsprong genomen. Maar dat is goed. Wel focussen nu. Voltallig over de top komen.
Team is now opened up a 5-second lead. Probably looked at what Dawson did last time through. Well, Dawson went at about the same time, actually. Well, no, Ottema's gone a little bit later, so he's had more time in the peloton to save himself, but he's really surging here and is moving clear. He's opened up 6.7 seconds. His rider's got 167 BPM. That's his heart rate, but holding at the moment 6.1 watts a kilo, just over, which equates, as you can see, to 500 watts, eye-watering watts here. But let's bring in Nathan again. A good move here by Ottema. Waited a little bit longer than Dawson, but this is a rider, Nathan, we've known very, very well. He's won some big events. He's got an engine, especially on a climb that's not super steep, to get into a good tempo here.
This is a really different situation, too, from what we've seen all of the other climbs. Ottema doing this at this point, if they go bottom to top, you notice the other climbs, they didn't go bottom to top. They kind of all looked at each other a little bit, and they climbed at a steady, very high pace, and then it was a kick at the end. This instigation might end up making a breakaway pack, or at least a much more whittled down pack up and over the top for the fight here. Now, if Ottema backs off and it all settles down, there's no counters, we might end up Gruppo Compacto again. But, you know, this instigation definitely changes the nature of this specific climb this third time up. And it really makes it interesting to me as to whether or not we're going to end up with a very reduced field at the top of this sprint.
Yeah, it looks like it's about to be caught now, I think, Ottema. So at 6 or 7 seconds at the bottom. And as you said, I think the class of Ottema and the fact he didn't open up too much of a lead, and the fact that in game as well, you'll be able to see him in front. He's that little carrot, literally a carrot in the colours of hexagon there, Jez, but he's about to be caught. But the shape of the bunch here changing. Duffy on the front, Zach Nair as well. It looks like the riders from Next Esports just trying to make sure they're represented.
Yeah, this is Johan Noren as well, the Swedish rider, just coming through as well into the big switchback. We're coming around to that steeper part of Box Hill, as Matt was mentioning. It ramps a little bit. Rocket Ottema, I went to call him there. Maybe I'll call him that from now on. Just slotting himself back into that group as we go over the National Trust Box Hill icon.
Kijk, zo juist in mijn oortje te horen dat Rinus Verelle zijn ketting heeft afgetrokken. Jammer genoeg zijn we dus wel 1 man kwijt. Dat verandert de situatie al toch wel lichtjes, toch zeker voor de overwinning. Maar je weet nooit, als onze andere jongens sterk blijven presteren, komt het aan hun op. Niks aan te doen, mechanische pech hoort er ook bij.
No, they're not going to stay clear, are they? It's coming back in again. So cautious, Matt.
Yeah. It was just what Nathan was saying. We've seen the climb ridden each time up, which is fascinating in terms of the way we didn't know what was going to happen in today's race because there's been no precedent before, the distance, the style of racing. But they're racing it differently again. Ottema it got caught, but I think we might see a little bit more of a selection. This has been raced far more aggressively and given the speed that they're moving at, it's very difficult to break away. Again, because of the gradient, there's a real benefit of the sort of speed they're moving at now. Only on 5%, they're going to be riding at about 25, maybe even 30 k's an hour. The record in real life on this climb equates to kind of 20, 21 miles an hour. So although it's a hard climb, it's a fast climb. It's a fast one, as Mel now tries again. We're coming to the top here. We've got about a kilometre or so before we get to the top. And remember, the worst of the climb is now over. This is where it gets fast.
7 watts per kilo for the Norwegian Vidal Mel. We've seen him attack at least 2 or 3 times already in this race, and this is big watts being thrown down. But once again, it's Bjorn Andresen. Look at that, over 8 watts per kilo from the world champion. He's ridden across to him as well. Has he got the momentum to hang on to this as well? Let's look who's chasing behind. They're both in excess of 2 seconds ahead. But we can see power-ups being used here as well, just to get a bit of extra draft. Perrin using that one brilliantly, Matt, by the looks of it, to just get up behind them, get in the draft, and then press on past them. Still exactly. So close, though.
Yeah, it's still very close. It's still a fair way to go. We've got another couple of corners. In fact, you can't actually see the finish. All these rods will know it really well, but you can't see the finish until about 50 meters to go. But the road veers off to the right in a minute, continues to climb, but only lightly. But Perrin about to be caught again by Andreasen, who's found something pretty special. No real surprise. You have to be a pretty special rider to wear those bands, that is for sure. But this effort by Perrin at the front has really started to string things out. But remember, in about 5 or 6 seconds, maybe a little bit more, we're going to see a lot of power-ups deployed, and there they come. It's a 40-second long power-up. Vital they time it right. We're coming through to finish again at the top here now.
Tom Perrin's so close to hanging on, but he's been overlapped by one of his own teammates as well. That's Duffy by the looks of it. Brian Duffy. So the opportunity here for Next Esports to score some big points. If Perrin can hang on, this could be a brilliant run. I know Perrin's slipping back as well, but it does look like Duffy. No, he's not. Our leaders, Aber Synergy, are going to take it by the looks of it. Van Elst, I think, just coming through on the line there by the looks of it, Matt. They are playing this. I just wonder if they are playing it absolutely brilliantly, our leading team, Aber Synergy. They're not getting involved in all the attacking. They're just there when it needs to be done.
They're just smart. They're just ridden so smart. I mean, it was Van Elst ahead of Brian Duffy, then Kaminski, then the world champion Andreasen, who's just rolling through there. A split has occurred, and Martin Martins also in the mix there for Toyota. But it's still Wahoo Lecole that lead off the back of the points. They've got 265 now, Jez. Aber Synergy with 225, Coalition Alpha 175. Fudra with that early scoring 150, then Toyota, Hexagon and Next Esports. So close at the top between Abus and Wahoo, but Wahoo at the moment have a 40-point lead, and there's one more opportunity, one more ascent of Box Hill to come.
Wow, so our leading team getting maximum points there as well. But as Matt has said, it is Wahoo Lecole, the team who went into this evening's racing in 4th place, who started this year in 4th place with 2 rounds to go. Wahoo Lecole, who are leading. Don't forget, I should point out, although they're sitting on 265 points, it doesn't mean those exact points are added. We give 35 points to the winning team on the night, which goes to the team overall as well. But Wahoo Lecole looking really good. There is just now one more ascent of Box Hill, where the first 5 riders across it will score. And then let me remind you, they complete one more complete lap, almost get to Box Hill, turn around and head for the finish line on the Mall right in front of Buckingham Palace. And there are points for everyone. But crucially, Matt, that is going to be some sprint, because there are 300 points for first place at that finish line. It's going to be a biggie, that.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot. 280, 260, as you said, all the way down to 80th. But I don't think 80 riders are going to score today. Not with this 5-minute cut-off. There's definitely going to be quite a few riders that finish outside of that one. And I think we've got about 30 riders in this front group here. 1 or 2 riders making sure they get back in contact as we look at a selection of riders here. Andreasen, Martin Martins, Kaminski, Duffy, Van Elst. Some classy bike riders indeed. But let's bring Nathan back in to just see. Nathan, what did you reckon? We've seen the climb, as you suggested, as you said, we've seen Box Hill being climbed differently each time up. Based on what we've just seen, how do you think the last time up is going to go? Get out your crystal ball for us if you can.
It's going to be interesting, you know. It really comes down to if they want to send attacks from from whether or not they send from the bottom to about that halfway point where it kind of snakes a little bit before you hit those paintings across. You know, it gets into that 5 to 6% gradient where there's a good amount of drafting. The speeds are higher. If you've made it to that point, it's going to be really hard to separate things. If they attack from the get-go, or at least up until that point, I could see things really separating. I do think we are going to see some riders try and make that kind of a move, especially those teams that have not been able to score with these high-end sprints at the top. I think we're going to see a lot more attacks. Now, the other thing, though, is if you notice, Automa's off the back now. You attack at the bottom, it's a big risk. Neil Freyet's off the back now. Jay Bruin's off the back now. Christoph Thiem is... And these are riders who...
Ik heb juist even alles nagekeken. Uiteindelijk zijn we Rinus verloren met een afgebroken ketting. En dat leek eventjes een donderslag bij heldere hemel. Maar wat ik dan zag was dat Stefan perfecte richtlijnen volgde. Next overroelde net voor de streep voor de 150 punten ging. Die ook binnenrijfde. We staan nu op de tweede plek achter Wahoo Lecol, maar die doen technisch al niet meer mee, want die hebben niet genoeg renners niet meer voorin zitten. En wat ik dan ook zag, en dat was het prettigste van al, is dat Next ook een geloste renner had, die ondertussen op 30 seconden achter zit. Dus uiteindelijk zijn we weer 4 tegen 4, maar wij hebben wel al punten en Next heeft minder. Dus als we dit kunnen volhouden, als we deze volgende vierde klim alle 4 mee over de top geraken, dan hoeven we misschien nog zelf geen punten te nemen en dan een goede finish met 4, dan kunnen we vandaag ook weer winnen. En als we dan vandaag dat echt kunnen klaarspelen, dan hebben we hier 5 op 6. En dan is er uiteindelijk denk ik maar 1 ploeg die mag deze ronde winnen. En dan bedoel ik de hele league. Maar jammer genoeg, door die dubbele punten zijn we nog steeds niet zeker, maar we gaan het zien. Zo meteen kom ik bij je terug als we aan de laatste maal Box Hill beginnen.
Again, and that's what it's this risk reward, isn't it? As we've just seen, we saw one of the most preeminent riders in Zwift racing and esports, and Rick Ottomer sacrificed himself to go for an effort, and now he's out the back and he's not going to score big tonight, but at least he had a go. So there is a risk. Gledner is now off the front for Movistar, a former teammate actually of Rick Ottomer. They both rode with Movistar a couple of years ago, now on rival teams of course, but a little group's just gone clear now. On Bjorn Andreasen has just latched on to the back of a rider, that Penitza just there, and Turek. So 4 riders going clear with a 3-second lead. So the other teams now have got to be very, very wary of this one, and I would imagine they're going to shut this one pretty quickly, because this is a dangerous move with some classy riders there.
It definitely is, Matt, and this is the point where we've seen other attacks going in the last 3 laps, and none of them have even looked like surviving. But there we go, I say it again, and it's being closed down again. The French rider Milor just closing it down as well. And power-ups, of course, as we've seen every lap so far, now being chucked out from the back pocket and used because we're back towards the finish line again. So you might as well use them here, and you can see the effect it's having as well of riders who are coming through too. So more or less all back together, but what we're not seeing so much of is the riders who are dripping off the back of this leading group. And as we mentioned already, the likes of Rick Ottomer dripping off the back, having been a big player in the race so far as well.
Indeed, it's a BL13 rider now. Harris, BLT 13 Pablo Level Velo. Just been caught, just as I got his name out, he's been caught by Vidar Mel. Kaminski goes straight over the top as well. Kaminski having a pretty active day for Coalition Alpha. The team, of course, across on the women's side of things who lead, but they're 3rd place here, 93 points on the overall. But this is a drastically reduced group. That last time up the climb, the way it was ridden a little bit differently. They went pretty hard for the last kilometre, as it really made a pretty decent selection this. A lot of the hitters you'd expect, and maybe 1 or 2 surprises in this group, as Berry now moves clear. Berry's just a little bit further back, shall I say.
Yeah, this you can see, I think we're starting to see, Matt, here a little bit, the fatigue creeping in, as it would getting this deep into a 70-kilometre race. Not just a 70-kilometre race because of the distance, but because of the accelerations that are being made constantly. We keep talking about the watts per kilo. If you're not a Zwift rider, maybe if you're not a racing cyclist yourself, and you're wondering kind of what that equates to, Well, anything that gets you into the red is going to be a problem, and to some people that might be 3 watts per kilo. But for these elite riders, once you're knocking above 5, I always think, Matt, when you see 5 on there, you know they're cranking on. When you get into 6, 7, 8 watts per kilo, you really know they're going for it. And they're the kind of efforts for most of these riders. Once they're getting above 6 into the 7s and 8 watts per kilo, you're not going to hold that for that long. I know that's a really unscientific explanation of it, but it's quite a nice way of reading into the numbers as you look down on them on the right-hand side of the screen there, I guess.
Indeed. No, it's Martins now who's moved clear. The man who won is such a versatile rider. Came to the fore as a exceptionally gifted climber. I think he did win on out to Zwift earlier this year, did the German Martins for the Toyota Elite Cycling. He's tried to go long. He's opened up a little bit of a gap. Brian Duffy Jr. of Next Esports trying to bring the gap back, but no, you're quite right. That watts per kilo is it's different for everybody, but of course the big numbers. We saw some numbers earlier when riders are really accelerating. We're looking at between 10 and 13 watts a kilo. That's an unsustainable sprint, really. That's something that you can only do for like between 5 and 15 seconds. But then 6 watts a kilo is what these riders can actually maintain for the best part of an hour, depending, of course, on your level of fitness. But it's pretty worth bringing Nathan in, actually, to see how riders kind of measure their effort on a day like this. We've seen some of the shorter, some of the Zwift races we've had this year, Nathan, half an hour, lots of really high spikes, but how will riders tackle this one, and how will they moderate the kind of efforts, especially how many times can a rider, sustain 6 watts a kilo? They might be able to do that for 5 minutes, but at what cost will that come to a rider in a race like this?
Yeah, and here's the thing: is a lot of riders who are big favorites so far, as far as like what we've seen from them in the Zwift Grand Prix. Have you not noticed? I mean, Michael Planthero going head to head, for the win a few weeks back. I haven't seen him on the front at all. Whereas other riders, Next Esports and some of these others have been all in at the front of a lot of these sprints so far. And that tells me that there's a few riders, as you were saying, measuring their efforts and waiting for the moments. Martin Martins, I think, was this the first time he scored this last time up over the top as well? And now later in the race starting to get active for that Toyota team. As far as who's measured things the most, I don't have in front of me right this moment, an average watts per kilogram. Maybe I need to go take a look at that if I can find it. But who's put out the least amount of power so far per their watts per kilogram versus what's going to happen in this last lap? I would not be surprised if there's a high ratio on that. That low watts per kilogram first half. The second half of the race, you're going to see all that energy absolutely explode. Watch out for Planthero. He's been so quiet.
That is interesting, Nathan. So we're now deep into that kind of fatigue resistance part of the race as well. What we haven't yet talked about is, we talked a bit about cooling and the fans, but Nathan, can I just ask you one more question? I'm just thinking about fueling as well, because over this kind of distance, I'd suspect some of these riders would be necking a gel or two maybe in here, or am I wrong? What do you reckon?
Oh, 100%. With the most recent, in the years past, big changes in the sugar intakes, glycogen stores needing to always be even refueled as you're on the bike. You supplement it a ton. And so, for these athletes amongst the men's field, I'd say somewhere between 80 to 120 grams of simple carbohydrates getting into the bloodstream somehow. So I'd be taking throughout this at a longer effort like this, every 15 to 20 minutes, I'd be throwing something down, or they're going to be doing some sort of a mixture in their bottle that they've really figured out to get the best, what we call osmolality in the stomach, the quickest transfer of those sugars through the gut into the bloodstream as fast as they possibly can. That's what it's all about. It's the name of the game, because sugar equals ATP, which equals power in the muscles.
Thank you, Dr. Guerra. I guess it's worth remembering as well that a lot of these riders we're seeing being hammered by an enormous fan. That means that you don't necessarily notice yourself sweating as much, do you? But that fan and the wind from it is immediately carrying away that sweat from your skin. So it's important to keep the fluid going in. I mean, how many bottles do you reckon? I mean, could you neck a couple of 500ml bottles during this?
Easy, yeah. I
reckon. I'd have thought so, wouldn't you?
I reckon so, yeah.
Yeah, I
would.
mean, if that was directed at me, not positive, but I would be going for at least 3 bottles, if not 4 bottles. I would to be careful, I would have 5 bottles lined up here. And if I felt like dehydrated somehow or something just didn't work out right, and I needed to get a bunch.
Vierde en laatste keer Box Hill. Nu is het voor de knikkers. We hebben voor het moment Martin Martens die weg is. En dat is goed, want als dat zo blijft, dan pakt hij de 150 punten weg. We moeten vooral nu proberen voor te zorgen dat Next zo min mogelijk punten op de top pakt. En dat kunnen we laten doen door renners weg te laten rijden. Momenteel zijn dat er 2. Zeggen dat de 150 en de 75 punten momenteel technisch weg zijn als ze de voorsprong kunnen bewaren. En dan zie je het er goed uit. En nu is het ook vooral belangrijk van door die muur te gaan. Iedereen heeft pijn, geloof me vrij. Als we hier met 4 over geraken, dan zetten we een grote stap naar een nieuwe overwinning. We gaan zo meteen de tunnel in. Ik ga eventjes terug overschakelen, want ik sta in contact met de renners. Ik moet alles in toog houden. Het is een belangrijke momentopkomst. Tot zo meteen.
The more efforts they can maintain, and that's why it's important to keep your powder dry as well as be aggressive. But I'm just looking at the stats of Martin Martins on the front. He did indeed. I wasn't going funny in the head. Martin Martins did win on the Alpe Zwift earlier this year, but he can maintain this sort of effort. He can ride for 5 minutes at 6.5 watts a kilo, or 20 minutes, 6 watts a kilo. So the effort that he's putting out at the moment for Martins is more than sustainable, and he's holding 20 seconds. In fact, over the last couple of kilometres just across the River Thames, he's added 3 seconds to his total now. So he's kind of matched the gap that we saw earlier on by the Irish chap that went clear. So he's got 20 seconds now, and Martin's ability on a climb like this, given his power, is very good power to weight. He's not just a rider that's built the gap with absolute power and is going to suffer on the climb. Martins can maintain this effort all the way up, and this is really interesting now. I think it's quite likely he's going to take the points over the top. The big question remains is, will he continue with the effort over the top?
Let's watch it. If you've just recently tuned in and are watching this on our Zwift YouTube channel, my name's Jez Cox. They were the words there of Matt Stevens, former British road race champion and Zwift esports expert alongside. But we also have Nathan Guerra here as well. We'll bring him back in just a moment. You are watching the penultimate round of the Zwift Grand Prix, the second edition of the Zwift Grand Prix, where we bring together the best elite Zwift riders in the world, men and women. This is the men's race you're watching right now. This is the final ascent of Box Hill before we then head to a big finish line where every rider who's within 5 minutes of our leader, who is currently Martins, who are watching right now on the climb, can score as long as they're within 5 minutes. This is our penultimate round. The women's race is due to start, well, not in the too distant future in actual fact. There'll be a little bit of an overlap, I believe. We'll update you on when the women's race actually starts. And of course, as soon as we can, and we've quickly rounded up the results of the men's race, we'll go straight to the women's race and bring you the action. They are doing exactly the same distance, as they kind of should be, as the men, of course. They're doing exactly the same course, same distance, and it's the same number of teams, 16 teams of 5. We're looking down at Martin Martins now. Look at the effort on the front from the rider from Toyota Elite. Let me remind you, that team is in 5th place right now. So his strikeout here, a good opportunity to score big points and stay ahead of Swedish Zwifters rider Norin here, who is chasing him down. Look in the distance, the rider's chasing him behind. It's a big gap as well. I think they're going to hang on by the looks of it. Matt, what do you reckon?
I think there's a very good chance. And in Norin, there's a big acceleration by the peloton on the flat section, but Norin actually dropped away. He's actually moving ever so slightly quicker. He's got him in his sights now. You can just see, we've got Martins on screen here, and just behind you can actually see the figure of Norin of Sweden closing the gap. 7.5 seconds. Importantly, Martins, over the 3rd place rider on the road, now has 26 seconds. And it was at this point that we saw the lead diminish on a couple of laps ago. So, well, Martins is on an absolute flyer. And to be honest with you, you wonder if he maintains 7 seconds over the top and that they keep their lead complete. I think it will come down by about 6 or 7 seconds because of the acceleration. In fact, it's the 3rd place rider Perrin at 26 and now 40 seconds. So this is
wow.
big. But if Norin and Martins get together over the top of this climb, I think from a tactical perspective, it might be good to bring in Nathan now, because Nathan, fascinating stuff here, mate. It looks like Martins is certainly going to take maximum points over the top, but given the situation behind him, even factoring in 15 seconds being taken back over the top, we could see an interesting duo here battling for the win.
Yeah, I think really this is what we were talking about earlier because of the nature of this race and the attrition of it. Martin Martins, Johan Noren, they know each other really, really well when it comes to races like this. And if you look behind how the story's playing out here, the reality of it is that there's riders that now see the danger of this that are looking to go across. They're thinking exactly what you just said, Matt. Thomas Perrin is now also saying, look, something's going up the road. We need to get on top of this. Somebody needs to get involved. Maybe it'll come back later, but next are like, if this stays, we need somebody there. Perrin's going now as well. We see Janot out there as well. It's going. It looks like Van Alster. There's definitely a worry in the back of the mind of a lot of these top riders in the peloton that a rider like Martins is going to stare away. What's interesting to me is I don't actually see where is Planthero to me? Where are some of these favorites? He's still trusting at this point, perhaps, or does he not have it today is a big question mark for me, because I would have expected him to be one of those. Also, Lionel Viasen, trusting. So there's two different mindsets here, it seems like. One within this pack that, no, it's not going to stay away, it'll come back together. And the other, like Perrin, Martins, going off the front here. I mean, there's definitely a whole nother Noren as well, saying, no, this is something to trust. I'm going for it. And I think Johan Noren, Martin Martins, they get together, that's definitely danger to stay away. And I think they will work together very well if they do end up together.
Just one more question.
Thank you, Nathan.
From me.
Go on.
Nathan. Sorry, Jez. One more question from me.
That's all right.
If you were Martin Martins' DS, would you say wait for Noren over the top?
Yeah, I get the points, and I would 100% say I get the points, and then once you got those points, like, don't, no freebies out here. But I would even, not risk too much of Noren's energy, actually, even. I would say, look, just get those points. No, obviously don't let him get within 2 seconds. But over the top, Noren is the kind of rider you want with you. This guy is top level, and you don't want to waste his energy. You want to, you want the gloves to come off with a K to go. Not right now, right? And at that point, then you want to say, hey, we're not friends anymore. But right now, he needs a good friend because that pack behind has some high power in it. Stay away from him. You need a friend out on course right now.
Well, let's focus on the race to the top of Box Hill for the final time, because Martins is so nearly there. Martin Martins has gone from an awfully long way out. Before we'd even crossed the river and gone under the escalator, he's only got to go around this corner. Noren is still 7 seconds, but he's dropping his power up for best he can. I don't think it'll help him at all, of course, because he's got no one to draft. And Martin Martins is going to take the final points on the top of Box Hill. He has survived. The German riding for Toyota Elite. He's made that one count, but boy, it could have been pretty close, and it still was close as well. Noren now goes through, uses his power up, despite the fact that it won't actually help him. And here comes the British rider, Tom Perrin, riding for the second-ranked team overall going into tonight, Next Esports. Andreasen also dropping his power up to get some more points as well. So that's the top 3 or 4 places gone now. I think the leading rider here might just pick up 5th spot for 35 points as well. So Martin Martins in first, Noren second, Perrin, the British rider, for Next Esports in third, Kaminski, the Polish rider, it was for Coalition Alpha, in fourth. The world champion Bjorn Andreasen picks up the 35 points for 5th place across the line. We are done with Box Hill for the men. Of course, we've got the women's race yet to come. They're taking in 4 ascents of it. It is now all about the run-in to the finish and trying to get riders, I think, quite crucially, inside that 5-minute gap. And actually, I think, there's going to be more outside that 5-minute time cutoff than we even thought. I think there's going to be quite a lot of them, Matt.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even this group behind Jez have been spread out. The top 15, there's big gaps in between them. 30 seconds to the 15th rider on the road. But Martins isn't waiting at the moment. Although Noren is starting to close, he's not actually waiting. We can just see the picture-in-picture there of our world champion a little bit further down. He's currently sat in 5th place, but Martins now gets into that aero super tuck, saves a couple of seconds, It looks like he's out of sight at the moment, especially at these sorts of speeds. The distance on the road stretched out, so Noren won't be able to see him. But this is fascinating. They've got 20 seconds over Andreasen, who's broken clear. Dawson's not too far behind. But that chasing pack are really spread out. There's no real organisation. And of course, Jez, at this late in the race, a lot of riders won't have multiple teammates to help work. So that falls in the favour of our two leaders out in front. The big question for me is, can and will Noren get across? And is Martins confident enough to ride this on his own? Or is he going to wait for Noren? And right now, he's certainly not waiting at all. To use the words of Pantani and Armstrong back in the day, no gifts.
Yes. That was on Alpe d'Huez itself, wasn't it? Not the Alpe du Zwift. You're picking the quotes from the very top there as well. The Martins is going to be enjoying this descent off the back of Box Hill, out of the Surrey Hills, and heading back towards the River Thames to cross over it. They do cross back in this direction again one more time, as I say, but no more ascents of Box Hill. So really, it's a very tactical chase now as well. Application of steady watts to try and wind in that gap. And the gap is coming down, though, Matt, definitely. Noren is still only 6 seconds behind Martins, but then the chasing pack is only 18 seconds behind. And I think we're going to gradually see that coming back as well. That is fascinating. Leading group of some, we think about 30 riders or so now, with most of the main protagonists in here, but teamwork in amongst them won't be too great. Next, esports, as we can see from that shot, have at least 3. No, they've got 4 riders in this leading group, as do Aber Synergy. So the teams up amongst our very best, first and second place teams, have got most of their team there. I'll look to see whether we've got 5 for Aber Synergy. I don't think we have. I think there's just 4 in there. Next esports have definitely got 4 too. So they are our 2 leading teams going into tonight's racing. So at this stage, Nathan, can I just bring you back in again, if that's all right, just to get a tactical perspective. I suspect where you are, you've got your jacket on. It's not a bit warm in there. I know you're right. You're getting warmed up and ready for winning place. It's very close to start. But don't worry, take time. We're going to be switching that as soon as we're able to be up. See the command place. This is too much. But we will be bringing you that. Nathan, yes, sorry. What I was going to ask you was, if you're in that second group now, I guess if you're not too far back, is it a case of, well, make sure you save something so you can win a sprint from the, so when I say second group, the next big group on the road, is it about trying to make sure you maximise points from that, or are you desperately chasing to try and get back in? I know it's probably a silly question, isn't it? Because everyone's desperately chasing to get to the finish. Is there any team tactics that could come into play?
Everything, a lot comes down to this moment right here, because how they are able, this moment and the other, there will be one more time out of the underground, and those 2 moments are going to be really, really crucial to see how much time is actually brought back from that big punch. At least in my mind, if I'm off the front with this little breakaway with Noren and Martins, I'm watching how motivated they are to continue with speed out of the underground, because that's a massive amount of time that can be taken out of us, because we're usually not going to be able to kick as high on our orange numbers and then continue on. We're going to have to be a little bit more conservative because we're working continually on the front. It's brought back down by a second or 2 now at this point, but they definitely backed off in that pack, not to 5 watts per kilogram plus. So I'm watching continually what kind of motivation that they've got back there. Now, when you're in the pack and you start watching to see how motivated people are to actually start doing any work, that's the moments when you start going, well, everyone's pulling about 4.5 to 5 watts per kilogram or less. We have to start attacking if anything's going to happen here, actually. And then it's a dice roll. At that point, you get two benefits then from attacking the pack. The pack's not working together. Our best bet at this point is to try and separate things out. And on top of that, what's going to happen is we're going to end up getting distance back on those riders. Once we actually cause a breakaway, let's start working together, and then we'll go get them back. So unless we start seeing one of these teams or 2 of these teams get into some major agreement and go, we'll just do work on the front, we don't care, make it happen, which I don't necessarily see happening, I think we're actually going to start seeing some crazy attacks like just now, orange numbers, and eventually there'll be a split, or these two stay away. Those are our two options, I think.
Thank you, Nathan. That's interesting. So that's the last time through our start gantry there, which means they've now picked up the final power-up, the final draft power-up that they will have today. So now I guess it gets a little bit more interesting and useful figuring out when you use that, because it's not a case of just using it up. And you can see Martin's there, Martin's using his to stay with Noren. Now they've gone through the arch already, so that is the final power-up he'll have, unless I'm missing something, and he's used it there just to stay in the leading two.
Yeah, it does look like he did deploy it there. Couple of little attacks just off the front from this group. But just Nathan was talking about the fact there's going to be lack of cohesion behind. They are going to try and chase, but increasingly as each of these kilometres ticks by, and we're primarily on flat roads here, no more ascents of Box Hill. There's a couple of little punches as Harvard Glednes of Movistar tries his luck, and in the process has taken the gap down to 15 seconds. But with the riders relaying on the front at the moment, Martins is on the front at 6.5 watts a kilo. Noren, sat tightly on his wheel, is doing 3 watts a kilo less. So they're relaying and able to put out 6.5 watts. And that means for the riders behind to shut down the gap, they've got to be putting out more power. And I think we're going to see an increasing lack of cohesion behind, but more and more attacks as riders try and get off the front that way. But right now, I think it's advantage Noren and Martins, but still with 8.6 Ks to go, the game isn't over. And they need to start, well, they need to continue to do what they're doing now and just hope that brittle alliance or a lack of alliance behind actually falls in their favour. But we could see somebody, one of the big hitters from behind, try and go solo and bridge across the gap. But 14 seconds alone is a hard thing to do with no climb. So Martins on at the front here. Very, very important that Noren tries to stay as close as he can here. And at this point in the race, Nathan, this is where the real skill at feathering power and riding close to the wheel comes in, isn't it? This is a critical part of the race. 8 Ks to go, but if you just drift off the wheel a bit too much, you're spending so much energy. But this is where that real skill at riding on Zwift and feathering the power comes into play, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%. You know, the ability to draft out on Zwift and knowing how to get exactly where you need to be. This is where I always like to say view 3. If you push number 3 on your keyboard or you go through the views on the companion app and you get to that first person point of view where it actually is like as if you are in the avatar's eyes, I like to use that the most because it gives me exactly what I need to know whether or not I'm perfectly on that wheel, and there isn't kind of this third person laid back camera where I'm sat in a place where I don't necessarily know that I'm right on the wheel. And so that helps me out a lot actually to make sure I'm getting the best draft as I possibly can. I'd actually be interested to know the percentage. If we did a poll of how many of the riders use view 3 versus view 1 on the keyboard, or the third person point of view that's removed away, and what they think about that for getting the best draft. Because view 3 versus that view 1 for me is massive difference, and I think I lose a little bit of that percentage on the draft if I don't use one or the other.
Nathan, that is fascinating to hear. I must admit, on the brief number of times I've raced on Zwift, I've preferred the slightly more distant view. But I see what you mean, not knowing quite where the other, and being that, particularly with the way that the dynamics of the game have changed in the last few months, where the drafting has become even more accurate and important. That makes a lot of sense to me. So just while we're watching these guys getting closer to the final 5 kilometers, Nathan, I'm conscious we're right at the beginning. It's January, right at the beginning of the year. That a lot of people might be just starting out on Zwift. What have you got any other big tips for making the most of moving up through the levels, and that's obviously a good one. Make sure you're drafting properly. And anything else you can give to us? Any tidbits?
Well, moving up the levels, there's all kinds of little XP stuff that's happening. But when it comes to racing tips, I mean, watching these sections of course that we're watching right now, I mean, as you can see, we said a little bit earlier, they were not going to be able to match the big orange numbers because they're continually reducing the energy stores that they have to be able to push. And so they're not reserved up like we see from Nair and Dawson and Harris and the others that have just punched a big orange numbers, as we like to call them, up in that 10 watts per kilogram or so. That's brought back 5 seconds very quickly. So those are going to be the crucial moments to watch for out on a course, and whether or not you're gaining or losing there is whether or not you need to invest any longer in a breakaway like this. Because that was brought back so quickly right there, and there was that motivation, in a moment here, we're going to see whether or not these two stay motivated in this breakaway, because they're going to start thinking how much more is going to come back once we get into the underground, because they're going to descend again, and that pack is probably going to go faster than they do even through the underground because in the downhill. Yep. And then once they climb again, there's a really big chance of being caught actually there. We may see motivation go out real quickly amongst these two.
Yeah. Nathan, Matt, I think I know the answer to this. Can I ask you both of you, are they going to stay away, those two, with 5K to go? What do you reckon, Nathan? Matt?
The chances are low, much lower right now. Much lower right now. There's a lot of motivation behind.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of motivation behind. The gap's come down. It's under 10 seconds now. And just reiterating what Nathan said, on the flat, it's harder to bring the time gap unless you've got a team relaying on the front. But on that little drag that we saw up to the monument there, that if you go hard on a drag like that, you can eat into the time. And going through the underground, I think they're going to need maybe 15 seconds to stay away. It's stabilized at the moment at 10 seconds, or there's not one team on the front. But I do think the death knell for our two leaders, if there were to be one, will come in the underground. And one thing that as well, when you've just got two runners out in front, when you're doing a team time trial on Zwift or relaying on the front as a team, you're in communication, you can talk to each other. Of course, Noren and Martins, they're working together, but they can't talk. So it's that nuance on Zwift they're having to rely on. And the gap coming down again, 7 seconds now to Vujasan and Plantereux, who are trying to chip across the gap here. What a thrilling finale this is.
Yeah, the Belgian and the Frenchman trying to get across that gap. It is coming back, but I tell you what, remember they've got to go all the way along the edge of the embankment, then across the river, under the river again, turn around at the bottom of Box Hill and go back on themselves. And this leading group is getting smaller and smaller under all these little attacks as well all the time. Let's remind ourselves, Matt, this is the important thing we need to think about. Right now, going into this final sprint where the winner can score 300 points, Wahoo Locol are leading on 300 points for tonight, okay? Now, don't forget, those points, putting this out to people at home, they don't correlate, are not added to the series points, but the leading team at the end of the night will get 35 points. Aber Synergy were our leading team going into this evening. They're currently sitting in 3rd place. Okay, so actually if it stays as it is and Wahoo Locol take the win, they're sitting on the win at the moment going into this final sprint. We'll watch out for those pink and blue jerseys of Wahoo Locol. They serve to move right up, I think. They're currently in 4th place, but a 35-point win could see them move up possibly to 3rd or even 2nd place going into next week's final round. So it is so close. I know people at home would expect us to say that, but it is really close. And we've got Swedish Zwifters and Toyota Elite represented in these leading two. Now, if they stay clear, they've got a chance to win 300 points, which is as much as any other team has scored all evening so far. It just goes to show how important this final sprint is, Matt, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. But it's coming 3.3 Ks to go, so we've got about 4.5 minutes of effort, maybe 5 minutes tops. And they're not going to relent. This is that little bit that we're coming up to that Nathan was just talking about, back into the underground. Thankfully, our engineers at Zwift have put some boards over the railway tracks just to make it a bit safe. But in a few minutes' time, in about 30 seconds time, we're going to swing right onto that brutally steep little kicker up the escalator, which is about 13-14%, and Martins and Noren are still clear, but they've only got 5.5 seconds over Daniel Turek and Perrin close behind. This is a critical point in the race now.
Yeah, we'll watch that moving up that we were discussing before, the finessing and moving up through that group to be ready for this final sprint. So close to being caught now, just over 5 seconds, that pack led by the Czech rider Turek for the next esports team, Dan Turek, heading up that group, and they're so close to catching him. You can see them just at the top of the escalator. What do they do now, Matt? Do they just pause and wait? We know how strong Noren and Martins are, but are they going to have anything left for this final sprint? 2.5K to go as well.
Yeah, it's just the momentum. There they are. It's just the momentum, as Nathan was saying earlier on. It's to speed up the climb and the additional momentum. If you're moving slower up up that steep climb, you just don't carry the speed over the top, and that is what's happened, and they're about to be caught. 1.5 seconds in closing. There's the peloton behind. I think the time of Noren and Martins is about to be, completely gone.
Well.
They are going to be caught as they head over the Thames. 2.2 Ks to go, and it looks as if finally they're going to be taken back, and there is the moment. It's the world champion, Jez, that brings them back together.
Oh, Bjorn Andreasen, who, of course, when he won that World Championship, did it all solo for so long. People thought he would be caught, but he hung on out there, just knocking out that tempo out front, the former mountain biker. And, of course, he's still wearing that World Champions jersey right now. He'll get to wear that all the way through to nearly the end of this year as well. Zach Nair goes over the top as well. Now the attacks start to roll once everyone's back in there. We've got a leading group of some 20 or so riders. Most of the biggest names in here in the world of Zwift racing. And Andreasen has looked so good and so solid throughout this, hasn't he? Once again, he reels back in Zach Nair and just continues to lead at the front. He's... I'm sure he'd love to ride away in the way that he did in those World Championships. But don't forget, this is not a scratch race. This is a points race. So much has been done so far. We've just seen the last two caught. But let's not forget, the two who were caught were our first and second place, Martins and Noren, over the last ascent of Box Hill. So they've not just played their part, but they've played it in a big way. And they're still in this group as well.
They certainly are. This is absolutely fascinating. 1,300 metres to go. We've got a group of, I think, about 25 riders, if that, coming towards the finish. It won't be long before they can see the Flamme Rouge. It's going to come down to a little bit of a sprint, or is it? I think the riders who don't fancy the sprint, happy to go early. And we've had a surge. Daniel Turek, not a known sprinter. Panazza as well. But Castelli has gone early as well. Plantereux, who's come second on the streets of London a few rounds back, also in the mix. Bouillassan are moving up through to the front. We've got 900 metres to go here, Jez. What a scintillating finale as the Italian gets caught by the Belgian.
Panizza, and then going over the top. This is where anyone who's got that power up, the draft power up left in there, can use that to slingshot themselves through the group. And Harris, the Australian, for BL13 has done exactly that. What a ride by Josh Harris. We saw him on the attack earlier. He's timed this one brilliantly, Matt. Can he hang on, though? He's only got 3 seconds lead, Josh Harris. Wow, what a ride by the Aussie.
Longest. This is amazing. 500 metres to go, Jez, but I tell you what, it's a very long 500 metres, if I can say that, but he's still clear. He's got 4 seconds, Jez.
My goodness, they're riding straight towards the gates of Buckingham Palace. He's on the red tarmac. Can he hang on in the middle of the road? The Aussie, everyone's dropping the power-ups. Here we go. Oh, he's there right in front of them. You can see the finish arch as well. I think he's going to do it, Matt. Right on the line, I think. Look at that. Harris is... Well, Harris has hung on. That was it. I do apologise. I'm just literally checking the actual finish gantry. What a ride by the Aussie in the colours of BL13. The team who are in 10th place, or were in 10th place going into tonight, he's just scored them 300 points on the night. So despite the fact we've not really been mentioning BL13, they're going to be right there, up there. In fact, they are, if I make that correct, Matt, even my maths can work that out. I don't know how many points Wahoo Lacol have scored there. We'll have a look down when we get to it. We will bring you all of this, folks, once we've ratified it and checked it. And I'm pleased to say it won't be me ratifying and checking it, because I am a mathematical numpty, as we both know, Matt, only too well. But he's just scored 300 points for that finale, which was the same number of points that Wahoo Lacol, our leading team, was sitting on anyway. So if they didn't score any points, but they will have scored points because everyone who finished scored points. But
well, Bjorn Andreasen was third. Yeah, so our world champion was third. We'll get confirmation of that in a minute, but it will obviously go down the count. But as you said, because of the amounts of points that are scored, in fact, I think we do have a result that has come through on the night, an initial result, but I'll leave that for you to talk about. But what an individual win. That has to be a season highlight for BL13 powered by Level Velo. He used that power up to devastating effect, but that was a hard 40-second run into the line. I mean, but a perfectly timed move, but that was super strong. Mightily impressive win by Harris.
Yes, what a great race. Now let's not forget, our women are getting underway. We will bring you folks at home, don't worry, particularly if you've tuned in fairly recently, you're ready to cheer on a fan or maybe even a family member, someone you know. You might even be in the same room or same house as someone who's about to race in the Women's Zwift Grand Prix here at the Epic Points Race. We will be bringing you that race imminently, but we will, of course, keep updating you on the ratified final results, even the provisional results as we get them, of the men's points race. Matt and I are looking at a provisional points table, but I think we'll hold back on that until our engineers bring it up on the screen. Rather, I'm quite good at putting my foot in things.
Ben benieuwd naar de uitslag. Nog eventjes afwachten. Het zal erom spannen tussen ons en Next. We gaan nog even geduld moeten hebben, want er is een timeline van 5 minuten. En dan pas gaan we de uitslag weten. Ondertussen stellen ze de vrouwen al voor, die ondertussen ook al vertrokken zijn. Maar nog enkele minuutjes geduld dus voor de uitslag. We waren met 4 in de top 20. Dat is alvast goed. Alleen gaan we moeten kijken hoe dat de 4 van Next het gedaan hebben. We stonden wel met een voorsprong natuurlijk. Tot zo meteen.
Colombi, Emilia Bottini and Roberta Borsoni as well. Rocacorba Collective, a team also wanting to try and move up nearer towards the top 10 if they can. Julie Cass, Roos Doyen and Kat Ridgway, a couple of key riders from them. And then BL13, well, can they do the same as the men today? Jay Harris taking the individual win, but I tell you what, that is going to buoy their spirits. What can the team of Anderson, Boniface, Maya Murray and Tredin do after that wonderful win by Harris this evening?
Absolutely. Let's see how BL13 can be lifted by that last lap performance. On to beast mode, the all-German team. Excuse me, and they're getting better. They're moving up too. 26 of their 31 points were scored just in the last 2 rounds. So that is a German team very much with the ascendancy, the wind in their sails. Aber Synergy, unlike the men team who went into this evening leading, their women's team are sitting in 11th place. They had their best round in the team time trial, so their combined strength together is excellent. Let's see if they can put that to fine work in this points race tonight. Let's see. Next Esports in 10th place and consistently sitting mid-pack all the way through the Zwift Grand Prix this winter. They were let down by a weak scratch race, though, in round 4. So let's hope that doesn't happen again for a team that has some very strong riders in there. Liz Van Houweling, probably the strongest of them, but let's see tonight, shall we? Movistar sitting in 9th, just inside that bottom half, if you like, of our teams. They had that fantastic points race in round 3, didn't they? But they've been very quiet since. So let's see if the points race format is something that can rally the Movistar women's team tonight.
Indeed.
Let's have a look at the next page.
Indeed. Well, Saris, Gabriela Guerra is there, a rider that I know one person amongst our team will be cheering on, that is for sure. She's going to be racing only a few feet away from Nathan. And they currently sit pretty solidly there in 8th place. Our Toyota Elite, looking at a rider there, Lucy Harris. Might like a course like this. Then we've got Team Swedish Zwifters who've got a very, very good team. They always have, led, I think, on a course like this by Anna Embring. They're currently in 6th place. And then 2024 currently sat in 5th place. Melissa Rollins, Laura Quinones, Miriam Paquet, Emma Langley and Medel Kuntz are the team that I think will definitely be eyeing moving up into 4th place today. But they've got 14 points behind Wahoo Coles. That might be a big ask for them.
Let's see. So moving on to our top 4. Just as with the men, Wahoo Lecole are in 4th place. So they're very even with their men's team at the moment. Let's see if they can change that this evening, though. They're a team on the up, Wahoo Lecole, for the women too. In their last 4 rounds, they've got 16 points, 20 points, and then 2 rounds where they've scored 28 in both, up on the podium as well. So they're definitely in the ascendancy. Can they carry that through to 2024? Let's see. Hexagon, the French team, are sitting in 3rd, and they're just 5 points off 2nd right now as well in 3rd place. They were winners of the mountain points race, don't forget, when Sandrine Etienne went off by herself and hoovered up mountains of points. Can she do the same thing here? That will be really interesting to see how the Frenchwoman Sandrine Etienne chooses to use the slopes of Box Hill. I think she could do it, Matt, but let's watch, shall we? Let's see. 2nd place is last year's winner, Aeonian. It's currently in 2nd, and I'm sure they'll look to try and get back on top if they can over the next 2 rounds. They were winners of the team time trial last round as well. They won the last round. So can they use that strength in numbers to close the gap at least to Coalition Alpha? Coalition Alpha, of course, are our leading team, led by their DS Reese Howell. sitting pretty at the top as they have done since November. But can they hang on as the attacking starts today? And how much, I wonder, Matt, will they have to rely on Lou Bates, who has been an absolute powerhouse for them, particularly in the points races?
Yep, they've got such a good team. As is it, yeah, definitely. And also Mary Wilkinson. I know she's been out on a bike getting the hours in of late in the cold conditions, and I think she'd prefer a longer attritional race. But yeah, they've got a really versatile squad, but they are the team to beat quite clearly.
Right, well, while we wait to bring you the men's result, and don't worry, folks at home, we will have that for you as soon as we can double and triple check it. We'll bring it to you right here. Let's check in on the event format, though. I said it's exactly the same as the men's, but it was quite a while ago when we started that men's 69.7 kilometre race, so we'll remind you what it is. We are on the PRL London PRL half course, as I say, 69.7. Let's call it 70k between friends. It is 4 laps of this London course where we go north of the river, through the start line, and then we dip south of the river and we go to Box Hill in Surrey, or what would be Surrey, but it's South London, Box Hill in South London. Up Box Hill, at the top of Box Hill, there are points for the first riders across it on each of the 4 laps. 150, 75, 50, 40 and 35 points, as you can see there on the screen, every time across it. There's those power-ups available when you go back through the start line and over the top of Box Hill, and they are the draft power-up, which increases your draft for 40 seconds. So the format's exactly the same as for the men, and I think we're ready to bring you some of the live action as well. This is the race points so far by the looks of it, and we'll be able to bring you up to speed with exactly where in the race we are. So by the looks of it then, we've already gone through over the top of Box Hill once, and we did wonder. I think we did wonder, no, sorry, I do apologise. We are now bringing you the race points from the finish line. Let me start that again, shall we? Matt, you jump in if you notice I'm talking a load of rubbish, which I often do. These are, of course, the finish line points for our final sprint. I was looking thinking, hang on a minute, what's going on here? I do apologise, it's been quite a long evening already. Yes, this was the finish, wasn't it, of the men's race last time across the line. And Harris, the Aussie, getting that fantastic 300 points as well. There was the top 10. Anyone stand out for you guys in there, Matt, or maybe Nathan, that we didn't mention that was in there? We're rolling down through the 20th, so we get to see who was in that group in the end.
Yeah, no, I think it's just a grouping of the riders. You can see 12th, 13th, 14th there for Abus. So they've grouped well, but nobody in the top 10. But the team, and we'll get the team rankings in a bit, the team that stood out for me in terms of getting multiple riders scoring lots of points was Next Esports. 3 inside the upper reaches of the top 10 there.
Yeah, we did keep mentioning, didn't we, that Next Esports were always there or thereabouts, very evident in that leading group too. So they've had a good night. It will be interesting to see the effect of that on the team points. Don't forget, we'll be able to give you a tally of all the team points scored on the night, and the team that has the highest points will score 35 series points. And certainly, Matt, from what I'm seeing in the provisional scoring, and we'll bring you that as soon as we can, it could be an interesting shuffle this evening. But don't forget, this is going into next week's Points Hunter. It's going to be absolutely mega. Let's see what it's done. Let's bring the race points up, the team points on the night, and there it is, Next Esports. We kept mentioning how many numbers they still had in that leading group, and that's what it does for you. 946 points on the night to Next Esports, our team who started the night in, he says, second place, weren't they, of course. Wahoo Lacole had that fantastic race in the Epic Points Hunt. They're in second, 934. Toyota Elite E-Cycling in third. They were in 5th place going into the night, so we'll see what that does to the standings overall. Then it's Coalition Alpha, Hexagon, BL13, sitting on 532 points to add to that's including the 300 of our final finishing line win, of course. Foudre Poncheur's Coalition had a good night as well, in 8th place, ahead of Movistar, Team Swedish Swifters, Castelli Elite, Restart, I should say, and then Beast Mode, Deepak, and Saris down on no points. A bad night for the riders in white and pink. So that's our 16 teams for the men. We're going to bring you now, I believe, a little bit of a replay of the action so far in the women's race, and then shortly after that we'll be able to join it live, of course. Let's have a look. So these are our leading women. What will be interesting to see is how much it's whittled down early on, as we can see. Early attackers as well, looking to get clear. And this is back on the streets of North London, of course, so I am presuming this is on the opening lap as well, heading out to Box Hill for the first time. My suspicion is they've taken in Box Hill already, but we'll bring you up to speed with that in just a moment. And the early attacker from Hexagon, and that is Marine Mougy. Just being reeled back in, and no surprise there, the colours of Aeonian and Coalition Alpha bossing the front end of this. I'm wondering, Matt, watching these pictures, whether we might see those two teams in.
Ondertussen ziet u de vrouwen al en zag u ook de uitslag bij de mannen. Next dan toch gewonnen. We zouden pas vierde zijn. Wat we dan wel constateerden was, ja, excuseer, jammer genoeg dat onze vijfde man Rinus, dat doorslaggevende factor is geweest. Rinus geen materiaalpech hebben gehad, had hij sowieso voldoende punten voor onze overwinning te schenken. Maar als, dat telt niet natuurlijk. We staan nog steeds op kop, daar zijn we wel zeker van. Next komt een heel pak dichter. Alles zal dus worden gespeeld volgende week donderdag in de ronde 7 tussen Next en Wahoo. Tussen ons, al de andere ploegen, gelijk Wahoo en zoals de Coalition, die doen niet echt meer mee. Het is Next versus Abu Synergy volgende week donderdag. Ik dank jullie voor het kijken. De dames zijn ook vertrokken. Maar die gaan we niet meer uitzenden, anders wordt de avond iets te lang vandaag. Ik hoop dat jullie allemaal komen supporteren volgende week donderdag. Het zal van doen zijn. We hopen dan ook onze troefkaart Lennart Teugels mee te hebben. Daar gaan we alles aan doen. Lennart is momenteel op stage in Spanje. En die komt donderdag wel terug naar huis, maar normaal gezien 's avonds pas. Dus we gaan alles aan doen om hem een ochtendvlucht te kunnen geven, zodoende dat we op hem kunnen rekenen. Maar dat gaan we moeten afwachten. In ieder geval, het zal nog heel spannend worden. En laat ons hopen. De jongens hebben het zo verdiend dat volgende week alles in de juiste plooi valt. We hebben al elke keer mee op dat podium gestaan en we hebben nog nooit gewonnen, dus ze verdienen het wel eens. We hebben ook eigenlijk heel deze winter gedomineerd en ook vandaag, nogmaals, als Rinus geen kettingbreuk heeft, zijn we met 5 mee en dan was er zelf geen discussie over wie dat er ging winnen, want dat waren voldoende punten geweest om iedereen nog te kloppen die voor ons eindigde. Maar dat is dus niet, dus ik hoop jullie volgende week terug te zien voor de laatste wedstrijd. Dubbele punten, heel belangrijk. Ronde 7 van de Zwift Grand Prix. Dank voor het kijken en tot volgende week. Bye bye.
Feel it rising up, then I push it down, saying you're in love. I could go without, let me get away. It's over now, it's over.